Hi everyone, welcome to the Circular Economy Show. I'm Lou, and today I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Vincent Muhoro, the founder and executive director of Dunia Bora in Kenya. Just 24 years old, straight out of university, Vincent recently signed up with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's Big Food Redesign Challenge because he is determined to take the common cactus from its somewhat checkered history into a future that sees it as an integral solution to supporting the livelihoods of local farmers. Regularly documenting his progress for the Foundation's Big Food Redesign Challenge, Vincent left university not just determined to tell his community's story, but to try and change that story into one that creates regenerative, nature-positive food, preserves biodiversity, and creates resilience to the effects of climate change, both locally and beyond. Hi, Vincent.
Hi.
Listen, we got to know you through the Foundation's Big Food Redesign Challenge, which is calling on food businesses and retailers to design and redefine food that allows nature to thrive. And Vincent, you very kindly agreed to take part and create a video diary of your initiatives and your ventures throughout the challenge through to January next year. And through your vlogging efforts and all of our communications through Zoom, we got to know you quite well. And we realised very quickly that your story goes far beyond this challenge. And, well, to me anyway, it's quite exceptional because you've taken the cactus, which was effectively an invasive scourge to your landscape, and out of that you have created a nutritious juice, cookies, a leather alternative, livestock feed, and I'm sure there's other byproducts. We'll learn more about the products and how they're made shortly, but I want to drill down. How did this venture begin? Where did it begin? And what drove you towards this incredible innovation and the realization that it could work?
So, the story of Dunia Bora. Now, Dunia Bora simply means a better world. Dunia Bora is coined from two Kiswahili words, Dunia and Bora. Dunia means world, and Bora means better. So put together, it means a better world. And that is all that I intend to do now through this social enterprise. Now, I was born in Laikipia County in Kenya. Now, Laikipia County is classified as an arid and semi-arid land. Now, the case hasn't always been so. When I was young, I remember we used to do a lot of farming. Well, it wasn't large-scale farming. It's not like we had hectares and hectares of land, but we were able to plant a few maize, a few corn, have a cow too. And it used to put food on the table and basically able to pay for my school fees. Now, as the more I got to grow up and go to high school, the situation kept on changing. Now, my parents were finding that doing the small-scale farming was becoming quite expensive and unreliable because we could miss like 2 seasons of rainfall. And basically, if you really depend on rainfall for your agriculture, then if you miss 2 seasons of rainfall, then you are basically going for loss because you have to incur the cost of planting, the cost of harvesting and all that. And so it was becoming quite untenable. The livestock were getting very skinny because if there's no food in the land, then they also do not get the feed. And if the pasture lands are drying, then the livestock. So by the time I was completing high school, we had sold all our livestock because it wasn't making sense financially speaking. And they had resorted to stop doing the normal farming. And now I kept on witnessing this when I was growing up. And when I joined university, I had a few goals. And one of the few goals for me was that I'm going to do media communication and tell the story of my community. But the more I got access to information and knowledge, I got to try to understand that numerous parts of the world are actually suffering from the same situation that you're facing. And that was climate change. The seasons are becoming more erratic, and this was affecting most especially the small-scale farmers who really depend on these natural seasons.
Vincent then shared his experiences mentoring high school students and how their discussions on climate change and SDGs, that's Sustainable Development Goals, caused him to take a step back and reflect on the need for local solutions and systemic change.
For these mentorship programs, I got to realize one question that I kept on being asking by the students. The students kept on asking me, Vincent, now you've spoken to us about the SDGs, about climate action, about the green jobs. Now, and since you seem so knowledgeable about these, so will you give us these green jobs you keep on talking about?
Right.
You keep on talking about the issue of food insecurity. Now, you have given us all these talks and they're uplifting, you're being able to think bigger, but where do we start from? And I got to realize that this was a question that most young people kept on asking themselves. Where do we start from? We want to do this, but what is the first step towards this direction? And so I stopped the mentorship programs because I sat back and I was like, what you're doing is good, but then what really can be the long-term solution to this? So for me, I was like, what is the solution that you can put forward that can be able to initiate systemic change? Because when you're talking about the food sector, we need a plant that can really be resilient to the drought. And when I was thinking about this, it took me back to the days I used to graze when I was young. When I used to graze as a young boy, I used to be sent to the pasture lands. And I remember because we could go for many kilometers away. And at times you could really calculate, do we go back home for lunch or do we find something we can eat in the bushes? And I was like, we used to eat the cactus plant. And something really unique about the cactus plant is that regardless of what came, be it floods, be it drought, the cactus was always there. And I was like, what really are we doing with the plant? So I started reading about the plant and I got to realize that this plant is actually an indigenous plant around this region. However, the reason we have so much of it is not by natural causes. So in the 1940s and 1930s, 40s and 50s, that was the time that Kenya was having the struggle for independence. Well, this is not usually a very fun story for people to tell. And so what the cactus plant was essentially used for, it was used for demarcating the land. So most of the Kenyans were put in the reserves where they were like, this is where you'll be living. And since more people had these, and the pastoralist communities have this habit of relocating and moving to greener pastures when it gets dry. So what was done is that the colonialists used the cactus plant as a fence, as a natural fence. And so for them, it was a deterrent. It is very thorny. And so they were like, in 5-6 years, one won't be able to cross across this land. And so from having a very small amount of cactus in the land, the numbers really grew exponentially. And it is huge amounts of land are covered by the cactus. And so for a long time, people now had this resentment for the cactus. Because for them, when they look at it historically, it was used to subjugate us. And so when people call it invasive, it was because, one, they have a historical background of it that is not so pleasing. Secondly, like I said, they're mostly pastoralist communities. And so since it grew in an uncontrolled space, so when the livestock feed on it during the dry seasons, they often develop sores on their tongues if they eat it unprocessed. And at times they lose their eyes. So most of the communities around here were like, we don't really like the cactus. And I think some people found an opportunity rather than looking at the cactus and asking themselves, can we do value addition for it? Is there a way we can change the story? They started looking for funds to eradicate the cactus. So for me, I was like, it doesn't make sense. All other plants aren't doing well. What is doing well is the cactus. Rather than eradicate it, how do we do value addition for it? How do we make it be a food that will not only sustain us during the dry periods, sustain our livestock, but also get on the shelves of global supermarkets? Be a product that you can say it's from Kenya, from invasive to being a plant that is this, it's really resilient. And so I kept on reading into it and doing some experiments, and I started by creating a few juices, giving to my neighbors at home, and they were like, hey, it's really sweet. I thought that everybody would remember it. And they said, yes, we know. We used to treat it as kids, but you never knew that once you take away the thorn and you package it well, it can be this delicious. And so the feedback kept on growing and people were like, we like the juice to begin with.
But he wasn't just stopping at the juices. Vincent quickly moved on to making cookies using the cactus juice and ground down cactus flour. Anything left over is then safely processed into livestock feed or used as vegan leather, which is no mean feat when you consider the enormity of the challenges Vincent and his community continually face. You've faced climate change. You said we went against the effects of climate change. What did that look like in your area and for your communities?
Wow, it was really bad, to be honest. When you talk about food insecurity, I think the people who are on the forums that talk about climate change going to COP whatever's all the time, but they really have not faced climate change firsthand. They will talk about drought and starvation, but for me, I've witnessed and seen one of our cows literally, shrivel and actually die because the veterinary said that the intestines were so together, and so even if we were trying to feed it, it really couldn't take up any more food because its inside was already gone. I've literally seen children having to drop out of school because they go to school and they don't have food, and so you really don't expect one to concentrate in class on a hungry stomach. Yeah. So we've had children who have been like, we'd better go and look for livelihood and try to hustle. And they end up in the quarry, that is the mines for the rocks. And that is the situation of some of my friends. I'm a bit fortunate that I actually even got to university because I have neighbors who dropped out in primary school, in high school along the way. We really hope that we can be able to at least improve the situation. I've seen parents who have literally resorted to begging, and you find parents who are outside the gates of politicians as early as 4 a.m. in the morning, waiting for the politician to wake up at around 7 a.m. so that they can get some handouts and at least go and get some food. And so their lands are really dry and they have got nothing. And now, after the dry season, at times the rain comes and it pours too heavily. Some of the roads that we literally go to the farms right now have all been wiped out. And it may take years for them to be reconstructed. So in as much as those who might harvest the food right now, the food may not even be able to get to the markets because the roads have been swept off by the floods. So once again, we will be in the same cycle because the rain won't be here forever. So the food, if the food is not able to be utilized, we'll have a lot of food, we'll have a lot of harvest losses. And what this means is that food insecurity will be a recurrent issue. And the saddest part is that we've got people, we've got so many corporations, we've got so many organizations who would rather have this to be continuing, because if this situation continues, then they are assured that they will can continue getting funding for the operations. They will be out there saying, hey, we want donations so that you can go and feed the people. It's sort of noble, but for me, I feel like it's not really a long-term solution. It's good people get food for today, but what about tomorrow? What about the next time there are floods? What about the next time drought decides to hit for 6 months? And that's why, for me, maybe it's not the perfect solution, but I think the cactus and its resilience, it's able to put some better form of hope, because you're not trying to be a monopoly. We want the farmers themselves to be able to do some of what you're doing ourselves.
And I think you're going way beyond, if I may say so, offering just an economic opportunity, but you're also, and correct me if I'm wrong, educating them on how to create a regenerative future and ensure this biodiversity thrives. How are you doing that?
So at first it was about going to the places that I used to see cactus growing up, and when I was in university and I was able to travel the country a bit. So I got to those areas and I'm like, hi guys, no, I see you have a lot of this plant. You know what it is? And they're like, yeah, we know it's cactus, but it's really a terrible plant. We just use it as fence, And if only there was a way of getting rid of it, we would, And I'm like, really? Do you know you can, have a taste of these? That's why I used to make a lot of samples and go with them. And they're like, hey, it's really good. And I'm like, this is made from the cactus. Now, there are a lot of things we can do with this. We can choose to go the way that you prefer. We get rid of the cactus, or we can try to make something out of it. And so for me, it's sort of a pitch, when most people go to pitch, they only consider pitching to the investors. So the pitch to the farmers is usually like, we don't really need to get rid of this plant. Now, what are some of the points you need to consider? One, you have to till the land. You have to use a lot of pesticides to maybe kill the weeds, to get rid of the insects and such, That you need to have a lot of water to cultivate the maize and other plants. Now, in comparison, what do you really need to cultivate the cactus plant? That is usually my question. They're like, we really don't even know. The plant just sprouts regardless of the condition. We just drop one here, and it just grows. We've literally never tended to it. And then I'm like, rather than it being a headache for you, what if it can be the source of your smile? We really don't need to cut out the grass. We don't need to cut any trees for the cactus to thrive. We can have this ecosystem that flourishes. We have the cactus plant, because I've done a lot of reading on it. I understand that it is able to sequester almost the same amount of carbon as the bamboo, if not more. That means, and store it in the soil. So if we have this plant, we're talking about also having communities that will be able to benefit from the carbon credits. I'm not really for or against the carbon credits, but if it is an opportunity for the communities to get some more income, for them to be able to regenerate their soils, and hopefully in the future be able to do some intercropping, that will be beautiful for me.
Can we go back a bit? Because
sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You started by making with the cactus the leather alternative. Yes. Are you still doing that?
Yes, we are. And so at first I was like, after the foods, I realized that the foods, I wanted them to be open source. Like I've said, for me, making the foods has always been about my community being able to improve, to get rid of food insecurity. But then looking at it from a business point of view, we really couldn't sell these food products for a lot of money. But here's another side of the industry, which is the fashion industry, which is really pollutive. If you're talking about the reasons of climate change, and climate change which is really affecting us, the fashion industry is one of the biggest perpetrators. And people are really willing to spend a lot of money on this industry. And so for us, I was like, I'm glad maybe through the participation of the big food redesign challenge, we'll probably get to see the food industry also being a bit profitable for us. But then initially, for me, it was like, it won't bring back money for us to scale up. So maybe we need to focus first on the leather. But now we are able to make this leather from the cactus waste. Like I said, during our drying process, some of the cactus pods, we can't use them to make the flour. Food grade really needs a higher standard of higher quality. So the waste from these cactus pods that maybe get spoiled in the drying process, as we make the cookies, the juice, we are now able to translate it and create vegan leather from it. So that is our whole model. Currently, like I said, we have not been able to sell it, because when we calculate the cost, yes, maybe we can be able, but the local market still hasn't been able to embrace vegan leather.
I wanted to know what blockers Vincent is currently facing in getting these products to market.
And so for us, the vegan leather, and also when it comes about certifications by the Kenya Bureau of Standards, I recently went and inquired, can we get, can you be able to mark, give us the stamp of approval that we're able to trade the leather within the country, in retail stores. And they were like, now what you have to do is that you'll have to set up a committee and now start creating the standards that people will need to follow for vegan leather, because it's quite a new industry. The same case also for the cactus foods, but then for that, you're able to maneuver around it, and you're almost getting the approvals and certifications. Now, for the vegan leather, that has been one of our other challenges, getting the certifications, also for the foods. But for the foods, we were able to go and have a chat with them. And fortunately, the process is going very smooth, and hopefully in a few weeks' time, we'll have the certifications for the food products.
I was just going to say, please tell me you've got the certification for
the food. Yeah. That is it.
Wow, that's so positive. That's such good news. However, while the vegan leather may be on hold for the moment, Vincent is certainly not lacking buy-in from his local communities for the food products.
Yeah. So currently we're in 3 counties in Kenya. We're in Laikipia County, in a place called Dodo, Ilpolei. We are also in a place called Isiolo County, around people who, if you ever visit Kenya, you can travel from Isiolo to Samburu. It's a very beautiful landscape. but when it dries, it can make you cry. But we also have some farmers around there and we have actually been able to open a collection center around there. So we go there twice a week and you're able to collect what people have been able to harvest, and we take it to a processing plant, which is really small. And so at times we have got the farmers are like, we have more produce, more than what you are able to process in a day. So it's that has been the challenge, because people are now willing, but then we have got less capacity. So we'd like to go and take it all up, and but you can only take as much as you can be able to handle. Currently, right now, the time that it was raining, like I said, we are currently just setting up our solar dryer. Before we had the solar dryer, we were drying in the open sunlight. And so during the rainy seasons, when it was raining a lot, we would find that we could not be able to dry. And so most of the produce wasn't drying well. And so it just had to be animal feed. And so when we were talking about making foods, at times it isn't sustainable, because we need to scale up and be able to take up most of the produce. When it comes to the willingness of the farmers, of the communities, I can say we have gotten more, a much more positive response that you can handle. And right now you're like, we need to cool down on going to the farmers until you're able to take up more products, because every location you've gone, we've had a lot of success.
So what's also needed now to drive this incredibly ambitious venture forward and see it through to its successful fruition?
One, we needed to get our story to be heard, and I'm glad you are helping us with that, getting the word out about this is what Dunia Bora is about. You're about using diverse ingredients, using local resources and trying to minimize the carbon footprint. We're all about creating a circular economy. We need a different financing mechanism for different parts of the world, because I'm not sure if that will be able to apply to us. And so some of the team that I work with, and they're like, we read the newspaper. I know I'm going off the topic. I'm sorry about that. But you read the newspaper, and after every month, we read about startups that are closing down in Kenya. And surprisingly, these startups have received funding of over $150 million. And most of them are ag tech. We are bringing technological solutions to the farmers, and we're bringing technological solutions to small scale business owners. And at times I'm like, these are cute ideas, but I wish funding was going to people who actually know the problem, and not basically someone who comes to Kenya for 1 week for a vacation and then they go back home and they're like, we know the problems of Kenyans. We're going to create this app that should be able to revolutionize this. They get funding of about $200 million, and in 1-2 years they realize, oh, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Where else? Yeah. So there is that disconnect, and that is something that maybe you're going to get. We are watching towards also growing, but the other challenge has been natural factors. You really can't control climate change, and the last few months it's been raining really heavily. So some of these are things we cannot control, but for what you can control, we are trying to get to learn and improve our knowledge. For instance, when it comes to matters of accountability, some of the farmers we deal with are mostly people who have not even started banking. They mostly at times use mobile money, or they prefer getting cash. And so when we are going to send back our reports about how have you been able to utilize maybe a funding of $10,000, it's a bit hard to account, because we'll be like, we won't go and tell the farmers, can you sign here that we actually paid you? I think we are growing and learning. Maybe it's because I'm also really young in the game and don't know how people actually operate. But for me, it's an interesting thing, and I love what I'm doing.
Once you've got the certification that you need to take this forward, what will the creative process look like, the creation process of these products?
So for Dunia Bora, as a social enterprise, what we hope to do is to have a number of factories. Currently, we are operating as a cottage industry. Actually, we are on sort of a rented space where we have been given. We have some, we have been donated some land so we can be able to set up some nurseries. We have by the end of this week, we'll be having our solar dryer ready. So we are really operating small, but the end goal will be to have at least 5 or so factories in Kenya, in different counties that are arid and semi-arid, and hopefully be able to expand into the larger Eastern African region, because when you talk about Ethiopia, we have got people who have already started reaching out to us. And so we are trying to create sort of a learning module that different people can be able to adopt, so that it can be easy to scale and replicate. We understand that we might be the guys who will be looked up when it comes to the standards of are the new players really matching up to the standard? So at some point we know that you're going to grow, and we don't intend on gatekeeping the industry, the manufacture of the cactus. We intend to have as more people in the world coming up with unique ingredients. Let us see more people in their homes making cactus salads, making cactus delicacies. On TikTok, on YouTube, we see people posting, and if we are able to achieve that, that will be our greatest happiness. That will my personal goal was that. But if you're able to make money in the process, be able to create more jobs, people working in the factory, be able to see our product on shelves in the UK, in the US, in Zanzibar, that will be a delight knowing that it's catching on and the world is really embracing it.
Well, I can't wait to see your products on the shelf in the UK. All the very best of luck, Vincent. Thank you so much for this. And no doubt I'll see you in another vlogging Zoom meeting in the next week or two.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you for joining us today for the Circular Economy Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. See you next time.